it's awareness, and I think, and 43 North, I think in its own little way is doing things to address those very things that you talk about. But I have to believe that if we can build a sustainable path to above average economic expansion in this community, it will ultimately filter into those areas that aren't being impacted. Now it has to. I hope that it does.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening whenever you may be listening, and welcome to Latitude, the 43 North podcast. This week's podcast is brought to you by KeyBank. What makes a great bank? The ability to bring sharp local focus while being able to tap into a national network of deep experience and expertise. To learn more how Key can help your business thrive and what they mean when they say use the red key, visit key.com. KeyBank is a member of FDIC. Hello again, I'm Nate Benson, Digital Media Manager at 43 North and host of the podcast. This is episode 23 of the podcast for Friday, August 18th, 2017, and I'm so excited to have you listening. Thank you for inviting us into your cars or earphones or your living room stereo system. On the podcast this week, we have the chairman of the board, the 43 North board, that is, Bill Maggio. As CEO of the Jacobs Institute on the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus, managing partner at Lorraine Capital, and many other roles, Bill Maggio is about as immersed as you can get in Buffalo's startup ecosystem. This week, Bill provides his perspective on the progress Buffalo's startup community has made, what's ahead for Buffalo, and his experience working with 43 North. So let's not waste another minute with me and get right to this week's interview. Bill, thank you for joining us this week on the Latitude podcast. So, based on my in-depth investigating research...
You're an investigator.
Yeah, I'm a huge investigator.
Okay.
Yeah, past life as a news guy, what can I say?
Yeah.
Looking at your bio and stuff, acquired and exited, six plus companies and various institutions, 9 other institutions you're a part of. So the hardest question I have for you is, when do you actually sleep?
So I actually do sleep. I sleep between 11 o'clock and 5 o'clock, sometimes between 1 and 5 o'clock. I'm always up at 5. It's anybody's guess to sleep.
So let's talk about your chairmanship at 43 North. You took over that 2 years ago. You're coming to the end of your tenure. What's the experience been like?
I think it's well, first, I think anybody who knows me knows how fond I am of this community, of this city. It's been very good to me, as you alluded to in your opening remarks there. I've successfully built a couple of companies in Buffalo, and it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the amazing people in this community and the resources that were given to me, the guidance, the mentorship that I got from people who kind of paved the path before me. I love this community, and to get more involved in 43 North, I think an organization that is really trying to build a sustainable startup ecosystem was just a natural progression for me. As chairman of the board of 43 North, I look at 43 North as a startup. We're a startup ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We've been in existence for 3.5 years. And we're a much different organization today than we were 3 years ago. But we're still working diligently to understand, because, for all intents and purposes, we're a state-funded organization, to understand the right level of transparency, a respectful level of transparency in how we build this organization. And I think more importantly, instilling that professional managed infrastructure that will help sustain beyond 43 North's life, the important role that it plays in the community, without in any way, shape, or form jeopardizing the entrepreneurial spirit that exists here. I remember a conversation with Jordan Levely who said, look, we have to continue to evolve, but we don't want to tamper with that entrepreneurial energy of all the young folks who really make 43, like yourself, who make 43 North move forward. So, it's a great place for me to be, given my love for this community, and I think the importance of what 43 North is to Western New York.
We're gearing up for the finals this year, coming up October 5th, and I know that's a favorite night for everybody here on staff and in the community. What do you look forward to when we get to finals night?
Yeah, so like the organization, evolving, and it's the various different stages of a startup. I think the event itself has evolved,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think it's turned into it's I say this. I've said this a couple of times now in the past couple of months as I spoke about 43 North to the community. When I walked out onto the stage last year at Chase and saw all those people out there, was when I realized that the community itself was getting behind this momentum that everybody is talking about. So I think what I'm looking forward to this year is really hopefully a repeat of that in terms of the number of people, which I'm being told we're going to exceed that, which is wonderful. But I think the show, really getting the community involved and helping us figure out, who are the next best 8 companies to come to Buffalo and continue in this mission of building a really great ecosystem of startup companies.
Anyone who knows you, I know you and I aren't best friends, but we've known each other for a little while now.
Absolutely. Yep.
Community is a big thing with you. Family's a big thing with you. So turning that on kind of the other side, 43 North being part of an overall community, how strong is the startup community now in Buffalo compared to when you got your start with your various businesses?
I think it's well. First of all, I think let's take a step back. 25, 30 years ago, I mean, there was innovation coming out of Buffalo. I mean, there were great thought leaders and great people doing wonderful things. I can talk about a guy like Larry Jacobs who made discoveries that ultimately led to the development of Biogen, which is one of the biggest biotech companies in the world now. Mm-hmm. He didn't have the vehicles in back in the 80s when he was making his discoveries to incubate those ideas in Buffalo. It's an entirely different environment here in Buffalo now than it was back then. But to answer your question, I think it's still fragile. I mean, we need some wins. We need some transformative wins. I don't think anybody questions that the infrastructure is here. Now it's just we got to get the right companies that can bring something of sustainable value to the global ecosystem, so to speak. But I think we're making progress. We have our critics. Let's face it. I mean, there are people out there who ask me questions all the time. Really, how many jobs have you created? How many of these companies are successful? They don't understand what it takes to build a successful company. We focus on these outliers, these organizations that have no revenue and sell for $1 billion. Those events do happen, but very infrequently. Mm-hmm. I think we're taking a very, kind of plateauing approach. We want to build sustainable bricks and mortar organizations, and that takes time. So I guess to answer your question, we're much further along than we were, say, 20, 30 years ago. We've got the infrastructure now. Now it's just a matter of identifying and incubating the right companies, and I think we're going to be just fine.
When you say wins, and I think the general public, there's an allure to startups. You see the headlines of like you said, these companies selling for $1 billion, no revenue.
Yeah.
So what does a win look like in the startup world in your experience? Because you've got a lot of experience, with acquisitions and exits.
Well, I think that's it. I would characterize a win that we get a company here, and they're growing at pace or above pace in their respective industries. They're hiring people. They're recruiting people to Buffalo. They're bringing expats back to Buffalo. I would love to see a collection of a whole bunch of 40 to 60 to 70, $80 million companies. What's truly transformative is, something like Michael Dell. I mean, here's a guy who starts a company in the basement of his home and or in a dorm room, I can't recall, and all of a sudden, I don't know how many jobs in I think they're in Texas, how many jobs they've created, but it's tens of thousands of jobs. That's transformative to a community. I think that will happen here, but I can't predict. Yeah. I can't predict who that's going to be. But I think we just want to, my philosophy is let's just hit some singles and doubles, and every once in a while we get a grand slam. I think that's what ultimately will be indicative of our success, of all the things that we're doing, just not what we're doing here at 43 North, but what others are doing in the community. And getting back to your question about the event in October, the event at Chase, our whole focus is going to revolve not only around what we're doing at 43 North, but what other people are doing. It's going to be a story about what's building this momentum. 43 North is a part of it. We're not all of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we're going to try to convey in October to the masses.
The theme this year is forward together, and when I came on board, it was my job to.
I didn't know that. That's nice to know. So it kind of fits with what I just said.
You can take
It's,
credit for
it's
it.
almost like we planned that.
I came up with it in the
That's
meeting, but
impressive.
I give you
Is it-
full reign to run with
Is
it.
this a time for your my 2 cents section? Or your,
Exactly, exactly. But when I came on board, to tell these stories, it was, we're trying to take the approach where it's not just 43 North puffing its chest, like look at our portfolio, like because we identify and we see just so much going on, and it's an activity that really hasn't been seen here in a few decades, right?
Yeah, I mean, so your question is just about the ecosystem
Yeah.
itself. I mean, yeah, I mean, look at what's happening at the medical campus, for example. I'm the vice chairman of the board of Kaleida Health, and I'm the board of the BNMC, and they're doing things that are transformative in their own businesses, which are requiring us to go out and bring people into this community to support those strategies. Those support this expansion of the ecosystem. We have entrepreneurs who have for one reason or another elected not to go the 43 North route, that are building wonderful startups in this community. We've got great initiatives at the University of Buffalo. University of Buffalo under his leadership has become more entrepreneurial in their approach, and on and on and on. So there's all sorts of things that are happening that are feeding this ecosystem, and I would be remiss not to mention the great support from our governor. Set aside your politics. He is very fond of Buffalo and continues to want to invest and speak very proudly of the progress that we're making here. But unlike in the past, or we're much wiser about how we use those state dollars to enhance and to recreate this economy here in Western New York.
Being a civic leader, being a thought leader in this town, which I would consider you one of them. What else do we have to do to kind of get over this next summer? There's sections of the city that aren't necessarily seeing all the benefits of this resurgence. So how do we really come together as a full city? How do we identify what other work needs to be done, and what work do you think, in your opinion, does need to be done?
A great point. I think I think it's simple. I think we can't get too caught up on our own headlines. I think we need to recognize that there's still a lot of bad things in our community that we need to fix. And I think we need to we need to be more than cognizant. We got to do tangible things to correct them, and I think we are doing those things. But we still are a very poor community, and as a result, that impacts everything. It impacts healthcare. It impacts our ability to successfully promote our community. I mean, to me, it's awareness, and I think. And 43 North, I think in its own little way, is doing things to address those very things that you talk about. But I have to believe that if we can build a sustainable path to above average economic expansion in this community, it will ultimately filter into those areas that aren't being impacted. Now, it has to. It has to. I hope that it does.
You'll be chairman emeritus, moving forward, so still connected to the 43 North family.
Sure.
But what's next for you? Because obviously you're, as I mentioned in the very beginning, super busy with a variety of boards, institutions, and of course Lorraine Capital. So
Right.
what's going on?
My priority will always continue to be my family.
Yeah.
Right. At the end of the day, they're my wife's the chairman, and my kids are the board of directors of my life, quite frankly. But I think. I plan to stay actively involved in Lorraine in 43 North as a board member, obviously chair emeritus, and continue to help advance this mission. And one of the things I think is going to be really important as we expand our profile, the number of people who are going to want to attempt to poke holes in what we're doing, and I think justifiably so, are going to increase. And I think we need to be here to continue to not defend, but to promote the important work that we're doing. But my priority is around my business, Lorraine Capital. I have wonderful partners. Our primary focus is to acquire bricks and mortar companies, keep those jobs in Buffalo, expand those companies, and continue to drive the expansion of the ecosystem here in Western New York. I'm really enjoying it. I feel like I have a lot to give, and that's the plan. Lorraine Capital. I'll always stay involved in the community. I'm very committed to Kaleida Health. I think we have an unhealthy community here. unfortunately, and we need to continue to do things to enhance our ability to deliver consistently good health care to the residents of Western New York. So I'm very passionate about that as well. But family, Lorraine Capital, and then whatever I can do in a small way to continue to help this community is my priority.
You mentioned acquiring other businesses moving forward. In terms of investment, that's always been one of the things about Buffalo that I think's been a challenge, at least in the research I've done, is, there was kind of this desert, so to speak, of investment coming into Buffalo and Buffalo companies. And through the variety of efforts with, 43 North, Z80, Launch New York, and, a few other institutions, more investments coming in. What needs to be done to further promote, Buffalo being a place where investment dollars will be spent appropriately and those investors see a return?
Wins. I mean, we need some wins. Number one, I think what we're seeing. I talked about Kaleida Health. I'll talk about my businesses that I sold. They were esoteric, healthcare companies, and in the 90s and in the early 2000s, it was very difficult to recruit people to Buffalo. So we're recruiting some great minds to Western, whether it's Roswell, whether it's Kaleida. Whether these 43 North startup companies, whatever. And those people are innovative. They're brilliant. And, they will make discoveries and they'll do things that I think will be relevant to this community. And look at what, to be tangential for a second, we had all of our mentors in on Monday, the mentors that mentor the young companies that won last year.
Which is a relatively new program.
Right, it's a new program, and I'm going to lose my train of thought, and you're going to have to bring me back, but I think it's an important point to make. So we brought them here, and a lot of them, some of them are expats, some of them are people that aren't really familiar with Western New York, but they have an industry skill set that we think are helpful to a winner, so we convinced them to be a mentor. But what we did is we brought them here, and we took them for, Robert Joya gave them a tour of Canal Side and the waterfront. The Bagulas and Bruce Popko set up a tour of all the great things that they're doing there at the arena and in and around their developments. We took them to Larkinville, and they saw what's happening at Larkinville. We gave them a tour of the medical campus, and they saw what's happening at the medical campus. And then they had lunch with Jerry Jacobs Jr. over at Delaware North in their brand new corporate headquarters. How in God name anybody can come to Buffalo and see all that, none of it which was here a decade ago, and not get a positive feeling about what's happening in Western New York, and not be able to, as an educated, successful business person, say, there's going to be some good things coming out of all these things, I think is kidding themselves. Now, there will always be the naysayers out there, but to your question earlier, all these great initiatives will push into those neighborhoods, and they will have an impact on this community eventually. As long as we stay focused, we cultivate the fundamentals that are important in building good businesses, I think we're going to be just fine.
Is it a matter of, and I always hate using the phrase educating the public because it sometimes can sound a little condescending and stuff, but, is it a matter of us, in a sense, educating folks that this is not an overnight, thing? Like, this is a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year, movement. And, so especially, the critics, and there's always going to be critics, who are asking, is this appropriate spending of money, or the terms of the 43 North winners being in Buffalo long enough, things like that. Do we need to do a better job of educating the public? Like, listen, this is a long-term investment, just like anything else.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think that that has to continue to evolve. I think people like the energy of 43 North. I think they feel motivated to want to get involved. But yeah, I mean, I don't think people really kind of understand what goes into running this competition and the decisions that we make day in and day out, how it's evolved, I mean, from, an initiative that wanted to just try to somehow, as quickly as possible, convince the world that Buffalo was a good place to want to come and build a business, to now how do we get better at picking those young businesses that we think would have the greatest potential of success long term. There's a lot of decisions that go into that, and there's a lot of work and effort that goes into that by a lot of volunteers, I might add. So, and that the community isn't and shouldn't be aware of. I think our responsibility is to always err on is to do things ethically and to do things in a way that is always representative of the fact that it is the people's money that is funding this initiative, and that we're good stewards of that responsibility. And I can say that I believe that we are. I know that we are. But, we'll continue to look at, when people hear about the medical campus, I mean, I still think there's a lot of people who are probably afraid to drive down here. I mean, I would tell you 10 years ago, if someone would have said to me that, a young couple will be walking down Ellicott Street at midnight and feel safe, I think I would probably, someone who loves this community would scratch my head. You and I both know that's not the case anymore. And once that medical school is open, this is going to become a 24/7 community. So, and I didn't even mention the medical school earlier on when I was talking about my remarks. So we're on the cusp of really, I think, addressing a lot of those things that have in the past been a challenge, getting people to really understand and believe that some of these initiatives can have sustainable impacts on our community. And let's face it, we all benefit from that, from better health care to better options for our children, to keep our children in Buffalo, escalation in the valuation of our homes, and so on and so forth.
Well, wrapping this up, because I know you're very busy, and it's a Friday afternoon when we're recording this, and the weekend's in sight. Kind of give you the last remark of, we're not sure if we're going to get another podcast with you while you're still chairman, so I'll kind of give you the last.
It's a brief one before the competition.
But I'll kind of give you the last word in terms of just your overall philosophy on the kind of the state of startups in Buffalo.
Well, I think I would compare it to where we were 5 years ago, and we're a heck of a lot further along. As far as 43 North is concerned, I think every day we have to prove our value, and that's challenging because the expectations are always expanding. And I believe that we've got a young team here that's prepared to do that, people like you and a lot of others. As far as people like me, who have had the great privilege of building companies in this community, I think more and more are stepping up and want to get engaged, not less. So I'm bullish on our future, and I always anticipate headwinds. I'm certain that there will be headwinds for us. You can't predict the things that are out of our control, but you don't want to you don't want to be too. When you're building businesses, planning is important, but what's the old saying, when we plan, God laughs, I think at some point you got to be intuitive. And I think this organization is learning to be intuitive in terms of how to manage itself, but also how to manage itself in this community. So all in all, I feel very, very positive. I'm very, very, very proud of what we've accomplished. And I'm very, very proud of the people that I've had an enormous privilege to work with.
Going back to our conversation earlier about community getting involved, in your estimation, what's the best way the community can get involved with what's going on?
I think, first of all, believe and talk proudly about this community. First and foremost, just talk proud about where you're from. I think most importantly, is we have to learn to endorse and support the companies that are coming here. And to give them an opportunity to make it, and I guess the most important thing to me, and has always been to me in my life, is I'm not someone who wants to wake up and hear about what I do well. I want to hear about the things I can do to improve. I think that we have to understand the need to be critical of what we're trying to do here, that there's always a way to get better. There's always a way to enhance what it is that we're attempting to do. Not only 43 North, but the folks at Kaleida and the folks at Roswell and the folks on this campus and everybody. I think we should have a mission to always want to enhance and improve the things that we're doing for the benefit of Western New York.
Well, Bill, thank you very much for your time. We'll see you on stage October 5th for the 43 North Finals.
Looking forward to it. Thank you for all your great work.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
I want to thank Bill for joining me on the podcast this week and for what he's done as chairman of 43 North. I know the 43 North Finals are one of the things Bill and so many people look forward to seeing, so don't worry, in the next couple weeks we'll be announcing how you can get your tickets for the October 5th event at Chase Performing Arts Center in downtown Buffalo. In other news, we're putting a brief pause on our weekly vlog 43 Forward. Think of it as a season-ending cliffhanger. We've loved the feedback we've gotten so far on 43 Forward, and we'll make more episodes very soon. But we've got a lot of content to produce for 43 North Finals, and we want the 3,000 people at the event to be blown away by that video content. So we're just going to focus our energy now, from a video standpoint, on the finals. We're already burning the midnight oil, so I truly hope you like what we present. But we'll still be trickling out some video content across social media, so be sure to follow 43 North on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Thank you to those who have left a review of this podcast on iTunes. If you haven't done so already, please take 2 minutes out of your day or evening and leave us a review. The more reviews we have, the better placement we get in various ranking systems, which means more people have the opportunity to listen. Thanks again for listening. For 43 North, I'm Nate Benson, and we'll see you at the next one.